Welcome everyone to our fourth and final session of our New Dentist Survival Guide series, Setting Yourself Up for Success. I'm Dr. James Wanamaker, Chair of the New Dentist Committee. Tonight, during our program, we're going to be talking about key issues affecting the profession with many great panelists and special guest, Senator Gounardes. We will also share an overview of the legislative process and why getting involved in the process is so important for you and your profession. As a new dentist, you've likely invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in your education. Being involved is one of the best insurance policies for protecting your profession and your career. Now I'd like to welcome our legends of advocacy, Dr. Mike Bro, Chair of EDPAC and ADPAC board member, Dr. Rick Andolina, Vice Chair of EDPAC and past Chair of ADPAC, and Roy Lasky, Chief Lobbyist for the New York State Dental Association. And I will turn it over to Roy to get us started and introduce the Senator.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a very exciting opportunity for us. I'm very grateful to Senator Andrew Gounardes for joining us here today. And for those of you on the call who are unaware of this, Senator Gounardes' father is Dr. Steve Gounardes, who's on the call. And Dr. Steve Gounardes is our past president of NYSDA and also our current speaker. And so we welcome both of them tonight. But Dr. Steve Gounardes is a mature person, but he's still younger than I am. But I remember 1985 like it was yesterday. Dr. Steve Gounardes called me up and he told me he had a son, Andrew. And I just said, congratulations. And then I said, well, what dental school is he going to go to? And Dr. Steve Gounardes said, Roy, this is a modern age. You had your sons in the 70s. I am not going to dominate. I'm not going to try to control him. He can go to any dental school he wants. If he wants to be an oral surgeon or orthodontist, that's okay. Well, much to Dr. Steve Gounardes' chagrin, Senator Gounardes decided not to go to dental school. He opted to go into the profession of public service, which is not totally unlike dentistry. And he went to George Washington Law School. He was active in his community. Both he and his father are they're Greek, they're devout, and they respect their heritage. And Senator Gounardes has been involved in charitable work his entire life. He co-founded an organization during the Superstorm Sandy, and they delivered over 25,000 hot meals to victims of that storm. He is a very, very committed individual. And I bring up the Greek aspect for a reason. I was a political science major, and I always remembered Aristotle, who's considered the greatest political philosopher of all time. And he described the politician as the master scientist. And he said, well, what exactly does that mean? Well, the master scientist is the politician because it's the legislator who determines how all the other professions are practiced. And it's very, very important to understand that dentistry is a profession. It's defined by the state. You're not a dentist until you have a piece of paper. You don't graduate from dental school until the government says okay. You don't graduate from college unless the government says it's okay. And you're not born until you get a birth certificate. So dentistry is a great profession, but you have a monopoly, but you also have to deal with the fact that you do not control everything in that profession. That profession, what you can do and what you cannot do, is determined in Albany by the legislators. Now, coincidentally, or I don't know if the senator did it on purpose because he knew he was going to be on this Zoom tonight, but Senator Gounardes sponsored a bill for us to allow dental hygienists to administer nitrous oxide or infiltration anesthesia on non-hygiene patients. If you allowed your dental hygienist to do either of those procedures on a non-hygiene patient in your office, she or he would be guilty of practicing the profession of dentist without a license and be subject to professional misconduct, and the dentist who allowed it would also be subject to professional misconduct charges. Now, we thought that was rather silly, but we couldn't just say, well, it's silly, we're going to do it anyway, because you have laws and you have regulations. So we had legislation introduced to change that, to allow hygienists to perform those procedures on any patient in the dental office, making them much more efficient, more cost-effective for the dentist. The bill passed the Assembly, and today at 4 o'clock, the bill passed the Senate. And it's on its way to the governor's office, where I am extremely confident it will be signed into law. Okay, and so that is the way the process works. And so even though the senator did not go into dentistry, he still has an enormous impact on the profession. He has such an in-depth knowledge of the profession, obviously. His background in politics is almost meteoric. I remember when he first was going to run for Senate, he consulted with me and several legislators from his area, and we all told him not to run. It was too early. You know, this is not your time. And he listened to us very respectfully, and then he ran. And he lost. But you know what? Sometimes when you lose, you win, because he didn't lose by that much. And he made a name for himself. And the next time he ran, he won. And before that, some of you may remember, he spoke at our House of Delegates meeting when he introduced his boss at the time, Eric Adams, the borough president. He was counsel to the now mayor of the city of New York back in those days. So his career has been meteoric, it's been impressive, and he's gotten very far very quickly. He is now the chair of the Budget and Revenue Committee for the state of New York. And that's a lot of money with a lot of responsibility. And even though I know his father still wishes he went to dental school, his father could take pride in the fact that his son is doing things for the public health, for the people of the state of New York. And in addition to being a son of the dental profession, Senator Andrew Gounardes is just a true caring friend of the dental profession, and we're very fortunate to have him where he is. Senator, you know, it's my honor to turn it over to you to say a few words and maybe answer a few questions.
Well, gee, Roy, I don't know if there's anything left to say. You kind of got the whole, you kind of got my whole biography there from birth until 10 minutes ago. So I think my part's pretty much done. I'm just here to smile. Good evening, everyone. It's really great to be here with you all. I always, you know, somewhat in jest, and I always joke around saying that every time I participate in a dental event, either through NYSDA or elsewhere, it's like coming to a family reunion. And it's true because, as you heard from Roy's introduction, and as you probably know through my father, I grew up in an organized dentistry household. Growing up, our family vacations, were based around dental convention schedules. So it was great. We got to go to Disney World, but then Dad had to go make sure he went to look at the toothpaste stand in the convention hall at the same time. So that's how I grew up, was in and around dentistry, and especially organized dentistry. And many of the members of the association, many of the officers, former officers, are people that I've known for years and years and years. We've traveled together, we've eaten together, we've laughed, cried, celebrated together, and we are like a family. So it's really just a pleasure to be here with you all. And even if I don't know you yet personally, I'm sure, given the fact that you're a part of this association, we will absolutely have a chance to work together in the future, because it really, being part of an association like this, being part of any professional association, giving up whatever time you have, because we all have busy lives, you all have practices to run, families to tend to, kids to raise, things going on, and it's hard to dedicate the time, whether it's an hour a month or an hour a day, to be part of a professional association. It's really, really important, because it shows that you care about your profession. It shows that you care about the future of your profession. It shows that you care about your colleagues. You care about what happens to your colleagues, and that you just care. And that's important to be a member, and for yourselves. It's also important for someone like me, who sits, wearing a legislative hat in any position of office, frankly, to see a very active and robust professional association with members constantly coming in, being engaged on issues, asking questions, talking about their issues, talking about their concerns, and you're just trying to advocate for a better profession. So I really kudos to all of you for being part of this, because I know it's not easy, but it is so incredibly important. As Roy mentioned, I've been in the Senate now for 4 years. I chair 3 years and 4 months, I guess. I'm serving my second year of my second term. I got elected in 2018. It's been a great privilege to represent Southern Brooklyn in the state legislature, in the state Senate. To date, I've had nearly 60 of my bills signed into law by both governors. That's a very high amount, not to toot my own horn, but something I'm very, very proud of, because I really do deeply care about this work. And this work is really all informed by the input that I get from others. It's a constituent who calls my office with an idea. It's a group of dentists or doctors who say, hey, here's this issue we really need help on. Can you help us figure out a solution to it? We're able to craft a bill, pass it through both chambers of the legislature, get it to the governor's desk for her signature, or his signature. So my legislative record is really a reflection upon the work of people who come out and reach out to my office and say, here's a problem, can you help us solve it? And that's how I view public service, that's how I view government, that's how I view my job as a legislator, is to be a problem solver. And I can't say that I was always drawn to this work, but I can say, due respect to all of you all, I knew after working for 7 years for my father that I would never, ever, ever spend my life looking in someone else's mouth. So on top of my kudos to you all for being part of this organization, kudos to you all for making that professional decision yourself. It was not for me. I tried going down that route. I tried working for my dad for a number of years, learned very quickly that it wasn't in the cards for me. So I'll stop there. I know we have some questions we want to get to, and I'd love just to have a dialogue with you all and talk about what it's like being on the inside, and how we can help strengthen your involvement in a really fantastic professional organization, and one that is very well respected, by the way. Everyone has their group that they're a part of that comes to Albany. Very few groups have the reputation that NYSDA does. And I don't say that because we're all family. I say that because that's the truth. When people hear NYSDA, when people hear about the Dental Association, my colleagues stop and listen. And that's a testament to the work that everyone's put in to make the organization that the one that it is. So I'll pause there and turn it back over to you guys.
Yeah, Senator, just before we get into the questions, as How large is New York's budget? You were your chair of the Budget Revenue Committee. I'd like you to just comment on your responsibilities, because in order to be good advocates, you have to be interested in things other than just relate to you. And so, what's your opinion? The state budget. What do you see going forward? And I'd be curious about your observations on that.
Sure. So this year's state budget was our largest ever, in fact, and that was largely due to the fact that we had a significant influx of federal dollars from various COVID stimulus bills. This year's state budget clocked in at around $216 billion, which is a lot of money. You know, there's no getting around that. It is a very large budget, but we're a very large state, and we have a great, many needs that need to be met across the board, whether it's education, healthcare spending, nursing homes, senior centers, the environment, you name it. Every issue that we might care about, either professionally or personally, comes with a price tag. And we have to pay for things in order to make things happen. So it was a big budget. It was a budget that I think by and large reflected a lot of compromises and took into account a lot of people's concerns. Things that we've never been able to pay for before, we were able to pay for in this budget, like a $4 billion expansion of childcare access, which was tremendous. As a new parent, we have a 15-month-old toddler, my wife and I, like, childcare is a very real thing. It's a workforce development issue. It's a it's an economic development issue. It's a family issue. And we were never able to provide childcare support before, and we were able to do it in this budget. So I think we've done a lot of great things in this year's budget. And then looking to the future, I think the question is really, for me, it really comes down to not how much money do we have to spend and how do we spend it. It really is, what do we need? What are the things that we need to be spending money on as a state, as a citizenry? What are the things that are fundamental? And then how do we make sure that we're meeting those needs? How are we spending enough and adequate resources for education? How are we making sure that we're able to take care of people who need access to healthcare, access to health insurance? What are we doing to make sure that we have a robust public sector workforce that's able to provide the government services that we've come to know and expect? Once we figure that out, then we figure out, how much it's going to cost us, and then we make calculations from there. I don't expect next year's budget to be as large because we're going to lose some of the federal support that we've gotten, but I do expect it to be somewhere in this ballpark. Again, because we are a big state and we're blessed that we have a very large tax base. A lot of companies base themselves here in New York. We have a lot of high net worth individuals who choose to reside here in New York, and we expect them, if they're going to live here and benefit from the state services, that they all pay their fair share. And I expect that's going to continue in the years ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the economy, of course, is crucial to all businesses in New York, and also professional dental practices, and that's something that you can't get away with. And if New York declines, our membership will decline, and we'll have fewer dentists in the state. So we got to hope we can turn that around. Just politically, how are you situated? You don't have a primary, is that correct?
Well, if we had had this meeting yesterday, I would have said that everything was okay. I have no primary. I'll have a general election like I've had the last few years. But as of about 4 or 5 hours ago, the New York State Court of Appeals threw out the recently enacted lines for Congress and the state Senate and ordered a special master to come up with new lines within a month. So I honestly have no idea what my political future holds, because I don't even know what district I'm running in anymore. It is a bit of a crazy decision, not to get too much into the weeds. The court found that the congressional lines and the state Senate lines, were invalid for procedural reasons, and then also ruled that the congressional lines were impermissibly too partisan, but the state Senate lines were not too partisan. So it's like a weird kind of combination decision that we're still trying to process, and a court-appointed special master will be drawing new lines over the next couple of weeks. They've pushed the primary back to August, when it's usually in June. So there's a lot of people in the political universe today just running around like a chicken with their head cut off, trying to make sense of everything.
That's so then you could conceivably get a primary if it's pushed to August.
Yep, that's absolutely true.
Okay, well, we have confidence in you, and we'll be there to support you. What about, not to put you in a hot seat, but what about statewide? How do you see things going that way? How do you, what do you predict on that?
So, it's going to be interesting now that even before today's decision, the political world was kind of turned upside down with the resignation, with the indictment and then resignation of our lieutenant governor. And it really presents a very interesting political question because obviously the governor was running with the lieutenant governor as a ticket in the primary. The governor and lieutenant governor run separately in the primary. And then after the primary, whoever wins joins on one ticket for the general election. So you have a bunch of people running for governor and lieutenant governor in the primaries challenging Kathy Hochul. But now Kathy Hochul does not have a lieutenant governor to balance out her ticket, but Brian Benjamin's name will still appear on the ballot. So it's a very weird, interesting political mess that we're in, that the governor has expressed her desire to see some type of solution. I don't know if a solution is possible. So we may end up having a situation where the governor wins the primary for re-election, but one of the people on the slates that are challenging her will become the next lieutenant governor nominee. So interesting political times.
Yes. Okay. And just before we get to the questions, people should know that the senator is also on the Higher Education Committee in the Senate, and that's the committee that oversees all the professions, determines what a professional can or cannot do, and his position on that committee was one of the reasons why we had him as one of the sponsors on that legislation passed today. So thank you very much again for that. And I guess, Grazia, if we want to take a couple of questions.
If anyone wants to add any questions to the Q&A right now, we don't have any in there. Let me just quickly run through the chat here and see.
I have one. Senator, where do you foresee your political future down the lines? Would you ever consider a run for Congress or expanding beyond where you are currently at?
I think the most honest answer I can give to that is, that TBD, we'll see. I never really, even though I've always been interested in politics and I always thought I would get involved in public service in this way, I've never been one that kind of tries to map out chart out the path to get someplace. I kind of just take every challenge that comes before me. I ran for office because I saw problems in my community that no one was addressing and I thought I could address. And so if it is determined that I can best serve where I'm at right now, there's a heck of a lot of things on my to-do list where I'm currently sitting that I want to keep working on. But if something ever opens up in the future and I feel like I can add a significant voice to try to problem solve in a different way, I would absolutely consider it, whether that's federally or elsewhere in the state. But I don't live my political life trying to figure that out. Because if you do that, you kind of lose sight of the reason why you got into this in the first place. And I come to this work with the real deep desire to like untangle really, really tricky knots and really try to understand issues and really try to understand problems and try to figure out solutions to them. That's why I was so happy that I've been able to get so many of my bills signed into law. It's because I put a premium on focusing on that aspect of the job. So the short answer is we'll see.
Great answer.
We do have one question. It's not necessarily dentistry specific, but one of our participants is wondering if you feel the governor will win the primaries. Not sure.
You know what? I have endorsed the governor for re-election. I have found her to be a very empathetic and collaborative leader as contrasted to her predecessor. It doesn't mean that I agree with every one of her decisions, but certainly a large number of them. I think she is the favorite right now in the primary, though I also know that in certain parts of the state, her popularity isn't as great as it perhaps could be or should be. So it's going to be a really interesting question. I mean, the primary is only 2 months away from yesterday. That is not a lot of time, but it also means that a lot can happen between now and then. If I had to bet, I would say she probably has the upper hand, but I don't think, no one ever has a lock on a victory in this business. And that's something that that I can say with 100% certainty, there's never a guarantee in politics.
Dr. Breaux, seems you have a question for the senator.
Yes, Senator, without necessarily opening a small can of worms here, just out of curiosity, from your perspective and insight, the former governor has apparently indicated that he may be interested in challenging some people here for this. Do you have any insight as to, if that indeed were to be the case, how that might turn out? If this is something that he logically should really think in terms of? I'm just curious for your opinions. Thank you.
I think it's certainly a good likelihood that he does not think his political future is over. His political career is over. The former governor is sitting on about $15 million in his campaign account. That is a lot of money. And I can certainly see it in him to try to run for office again, either on an independent line this November or holding his fire for a future election. How do I think he'll be perceived? You know what? That's really a tough question. I think different people saw different pluses and minuses in the former governor. I think it's also going to be a reflection on how people feel about the current crop of leadership we have. Right? Elections are often, not all, they are contests between, it's a relativity contest, right? Who is the better or least worst choice? It's not like who is the ultimate best, because we don't often get the ultimate best or the ultimate worst running for office. You have to compare one candidate versus another. And so right now, I don't think former Governor Cuomo has a chance politically, but maybe 3 months from now, the governor and the comptroller and the attorney general and everyone else is, in the tank, and he sees an opening, and the public says, you know what? Yeah, what Cuomo did was bad, but I could live with that compared to what these other guys are doing. It really can depend. Me personally, I don't foresee a future in which I support the former governor for any position. I found him to be very difficult to work with. I think what happened with the nursing homes was a travesty. And you can understand that in the heat of the moment, some decisions may have been made that were well-intentioned but had bad consequences. And it's heartbreaking but understandable. But to lie about it and cover it up, in my opinion, was problematic. And even more deeply concerning for me was the actions about sexual harassment, the substantiated allegations of sexual harassment that he committed. For me, legislatively, for those that don't know, I spend a lot of my time legislatively working on trying to combat sexual harassment in the workplace. I've had 3 of my bills passed and signed into law to really change workplace harassment culture. It is an issue I care very deeply about, and I work hand in hand with many former survivors of harassment on that legislation. So to see what he did and what he was substantiated of doing, I just couldn't live with myself to support him again based on that alone.
Before Dr. hold on, before Roy, there's a couple questions just to field before. Do you have any thoughts or opinions on the proposal to have the profession of dentistry move from the control of state education to the state health department?
Yeah, the governor proposed doing that in this year's budget, and we successfully fought back against that proposal. I know that there's some disgruntlement with SED, with the state education department, in terms of how they issue some regulations as it relates to dentistry. I actually have a bill that I'm working on with NYSDA to clarify some of SED's prior guidance. But that notwithstanding, I think moving the certification process and the oversight responsibility from the state education department, which really oversees all curriculum related issues and certification issues, to an agency that does not have the experience to handle that or the knowledge base to handle that, is going to be worse. So I'm glad we pushed back on the governor this year. We're going to keep working to get the education department to where we need it to be as it relates to dentistry. And hopefully that'll be the best outcome for everybody.
There's a couple more in here. Senator, do you think that New York will adopt a universal single-payer healthcare this year?
I don't think it'll happen this year, but it is clearly something that is under discussion and deliberation, and there is a lot of support for it. And, you know, by and large, for good reason, because, you know, healthcare in this state and in this country is really broken. The number one cause of personal bankruptcy in New York State are unpaid medical bills. And it's not because people don't want to pay their bills, it's because their medical costs are skyrocketing. Hospitalization costs alone have grown by 6% a year over the last 4 years in New York and across the country. And we spend more than $2.3 trillion a year in increasing hospitalization costs. It's a fundamental flaw in the system. That is why there's so much energy in trying to fix it. I think if there's going to be any push towards a single payer system, my view on it is it sounds great on paper, but the details really matter. And any type of payment, any type of healthcare system, single payer or otherwise, that does not adequately pay providers for the level of care that they provide is simply doomed to fail. And I know many of you know this firsthand with the way that the New York State Medicaid program has chronically and consistently underpaid for dental care. This has also been an issue at the federal level. And currently, my concerns with the draft of the New York Health Act is that it does not require the State Department of Health to adequately pay for the cost of care. That's a big flaw. It needs to get fixed in order to have any chance at creating a system like this. What good is giving everyone health insurance if there's no more doctors or providers left to be able to provide the care that people need? Otherwise, it's just a card in your wallet, and we all have enough of those. So,
Very good.
I have one more question in the queue, and then I'll let Dr. Andolina. Is that okay, Dr. Andolina?
That's fine.
Okay, perfect. Do you see anything related to the profession of dentistry that we should focus on?
You know, I think the scope of practice bill that I talked about briefly is something that would obviously be of concern to you all. I would encourage everyone on this call, if you haven't already, to reach out to your local assembly member and your local state senator. Introduce yourselves if you don't have a relationship with them. And just say, hi, you know, I live in your district, or I have a practice in your district. I employ 10 people in your district. I treat patients in your district. There's this bill that I'm very supportive of that I want to see support. Can you co-sponsor it? Can you add your name? Will you commit to voting for it? I think that there's a NYSDA meeting next week or the next couple of weeks where folks are coming to Albany. You'll have a chance to lobby some members. But even if you can't come up to Albany for that, there's no reason to stop you from calling your local elected official's office, their assembly member, your senator, sending an email, sending a letter, tweet at them, Instagram message them, Facebook them, however you choose to communicate. Let it be known that you live in that district and that you care about this bill. And that helps us build grassroots support for it. And it shows my colleagues that there is a constituency for some of the bills that we're trying to push across. It's not just some bill for some interest group, in this case, the dentist. This is a bill that's going to affect people in their own communities. And they need to hear that. They need to hear from you about that.
Perfect, Dr. Andolina. You have.
Well, it's interesting. I think the senator was reading my mind. He's known me too long. Anyhow, on this call, we've got a lot of new dentists. This is a new dentist meeting, anyhow, webinar. Anyhow, I wanted you to talk about the importance of establishing relationships, getting to know the legislators. Is that important? Should they contact you? Should they go if you have town halls? It's their future. We on this call, we're older. This other than James, we're not going to be as affected by legislation as the new dentists will be. And I just think that a lot of times individuals think that they're never going to listen to me. Why do I want to bother with this? What's the rationale? And they look upon it as not being important. And I guess I'd like you to respond to that with your overall feelings.
Look, you captured it perfectly. I can't promise you that every single time you reach out to your assembly member or senator or city council member or congressman or whoever, that they're going to listen to you. They should, but I can't say that they are, right? But I can tell you that if you don't reach out, they never will. So it is so important for you as an individual, as a constituent, as someone who lives in the community, and as someone who cares about what happens to your profession, and to know that your profession is regulated by government, to be involved and be active and be engaged. And you can do that in different ways. You don't have to make it, it doesn't have to be a cumbersome process. But I think making yourself known, whether that's sending an email, inviting them to your local component events, or coming up to Albany for lobby days, are all really important. I can tell you in my office what we do. Every week, I get a breakdown from my staff. Everyone who calls and what they call about. Whether it's a constituent problem, I get a breakdown. We had 5 calls about broken streetlights, 3 calls about stop signs, 2 calls about unemployment insurance. And then I get a list of calls on legislation. 10 people called in favor of X. 15 people called in opposition to Y. And then we tally up the emails we get. 145 people wrote yesterday about support of this bill. 227 people wrote about this bill. Because I want to get a sense what people are talking about in my district. And that helps inform what I do when I'm in Albany. It helps put issues on my radar. I'm going to be very honest. And I didn't appreciate this when I first took the job, and it still is a challenge to manage. Being in office, being a legislator in a state as big as New York, every single day, it's like drinking out of a fire hose. Because just like you are all an active and engaged association, and you have all of your issues and all of your concerns and all of your legislative priorities, there are 5,000 other interest groups with the same, their issues, their concerns, their priorities, their bills. And then you have all your constituents. I get about 2,500 emails a day in my government email account, not to mention like nearly 100 phone calls from people in my Albany office and my Brooklyn office. Focus on this, focus on that, do this, do this. Why haven't you done this yet? Why haven't you talked about that? You're literally drinking out of a fire hose. It's impossible to know every issue, be on top of every issue, and have an answer for every issue. But if I know that 150 dentists in the borough of Brooklyn called my office and said, hey, this is a priority, it puts it on my radar. Now I'm thinking about it. Now I have my staff pull the bill and look at it. What does the bill do? What is it? How should I sign as a co-sponsor? Do I have any questions? Do I have any concerns? Can I call anyone about it? So your engagement and your involvement helps put issues, it helps them rise to the front of the agenda, and then make sure that I pay attention to it. And then hopefully we're able to take that attention and then try to get things passed. But if you're not engaged, and if you don't call, and if you don't email, and if you don't show up at the component meetings, and if you don't make it up to the lobby day, or whatever you do, or whatever opportunities there are for you to engage, I'll never hear your voice. Your assembly member will never hear your voice. Your senator will never hear your voice. And then it's lost.
I think you touched on something very interesting, Senator, as far as how James kind of got involved within his path to where he is now. Did you want to share a little bit about that, James?
Oh, you're muted, James.
Yeah,
Thanks.
there you go.
I was a first-year dental student, and Dr. Andolina came to Buffalo Dental School talking about advocacy and why it was important to get involved. So as a student, I just went up to him and said, how can I get involved? And he started bringing me to fundraisers and events and in networking events with the ADA and lobby days, and went on from there and did exactly what you said, build relationships with our local representatives.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I remember my first year in office, I had a contingent of dental students come up with NYSDA to meet with me in my office, just like it happened with you, James, like the exact same thing. And the reality is, in politics and government, there are going to be times when we don't always agree on everything, right? That maybe there's a bill that you have a view on, but that other people have a different view on, and things don't always go the way we want them to. That happens to me too. But the important thing about government, and we sometimes forget about this when we see like social media and we see just the bitter divide and polarization, especially at the national level when things don't get done at all. The most important thing is dialogue. Dialogue is not a bad word. Talking about things, asking questions is not a bad thing. Compromising on things is not bad. It's not a bad thing. That's how our system was designed to work. And the most effective and successful advocacy organizations at any level of government all put a premium on dialogue. That's what it comes down to. So you want to put yourself in a position as an individual member and as of the association and as an association to always be able to have a conversation with people that are making decisions on your behalf. Sometimes those decisions go your way, sometimes they don't, but at least you want to be part of the conversation. That's really the critical thing here. And you can't do that unless you are actively involved. And like I said earlier, I know it's tough. You're building a new practice. You're trying to hang up a shingle. You're trying to chase down insurance companies. You're trying to bring in new patients. You're trying to take your kids to soccer practice on the week. We all got a million one things going on. This might seem like the least important thing. Find a way to fit it in a way that makes it easiest for you. It does not have to be, your whole life. It does not have to be, you don't have to build your family vacation schedules around the dental convention, is what I'm saying. There are other ways of being involved to still be active and still be effective in order to make a difference.
Mhm.
But if you do want to travel to the convention, that's cool too.
Yeah, I'd like to just make a comment there. I've been lobbying for a number of years, and there is nothing more effective when I'm talking to a legislator, besides them looking at my face, is for them to have the vision of a local dentist. When I can talk about the dentist in their district, when they can connect me to the district and to real people, there's no substitute for that. And I know that the senator was smiling at my introduction saying, boy, I didn't leave that much for him. Well, I'm going to tell you, after your discussion about organization, grassroots, getting involved at the component level and the state level, you stole not just my thunder, but Dr. Angelina, Dr. Bro, and Dr. Wanamaker, and we're all glad you did it.
See, I told you, we all know each other for far too long. We all
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, if I could give one more, just kind of a statement. A lot of us have been advocating for the profession for a lot of years. Anyhow, what I've noticed, and Governor, or I'm moving you up to Governor, Senator, that's a little bit of a jump. Anyhow, what I've noticed, and since this is for the new dentists who are just more recently dental students, and by the way, I have a son who graduated dental school in 2013, so he's actually a new dentist. When we've gone with dental students to our legislators, both at the state level and at the national level, very often these legislators look at the older of us, Mike, me, Roy as a lobbyist and some others, and they see somebody with gray hair, no hair, and their philosophy, not their philosophy, their thought is that, these are successful dentists. What are they worried about? Why, they got more money than they know what to do with, because that's a common, misconception. Anyhow, when you have young dentists going in there or dental students, and they're able to talk about issues and they can tell a story about what their student costs were, their loans, how hard it is to stay established, getting started, how badly, they'd like to take care of the indigent population, but how they can't. All of a sudden, I think that registers more with legislators than us older individuals, more senior individuals go in and state that. And ironically, it just seems a lot of times like the legislators listen more intently to the new dentists and the dental students than they do to the dentists. Any thoughts on that, Senator?
I don't discriminate based on age. But I think I will say this though, it is there is partly a generational affinity that I think folks feel, and this is not just in politics or government. I think we often are able to relate to people and on a one-on-one, a person-to-person level when we come from the same generational cohort. So when you talk to me about your student loan debt, and right now, what the average cost of dental school in New York is $75,000, $80,000 a year, right? Like, I can relate to that because law school is super expensive too, and we were going to school at the same time, right? Different than when my father went to dental school, when Dr. Antonina went to dental school, or whoever, right? It was a different time, and so there's different issues that we can all relate to. So I would say in that regard, it certainly is a benefit to having folks talk to each other when they can have that shared set of experiences. It doesn't mean that I care less about the testimony or the lived experiences or the concerns of someone who might be older. It just means that I can process it and understand it a little bit better. And I can relate it to my own. I can only be as effective in this job by basing it on my own experiences, my own understanding of the world, and what I hear from other people. It's those three things combined. And so when we talk and when I say, oh yeah, I had the same problem when I went to school, or I had the same problem trying to afford childcare right now, just like you do. Oh, you're a new parent too, paying student debt and childcare costs. It's like a second mortgage, right? I get that. We can relate on that. And that just makes it more deeply personal. So there certainly is a benefit there, but I think it's more the generational cohort than it is the bias towards older versus younger.
We're getting near to the end of our session, which ends around 8 o'clock. I didn't know if any of the attendees had any more questions in the Q&A, but if there's any closing remarks that Roy wanted to add for the group, and if James, there was anything else you wanted to add, I just wanted to give everyone a chance.
I would just like to, remind the audience that we have Dr. Bro and Dr. Andolina are both very active at the EDPAC level. And everything that that Senator Gounardes has said about getting involved and working, it applies nationwide as well. During COVID, when we had the crisis with the residencies, they couldn't get enough patients, et cetera. CODA was questioning whether they could certify everybody, and we called Michael Graham, called Dr. Gounardes, other residency directors, Dr. Leary, our trustee, and they put us in touch with a national group, and we solved the problem for the residents very quickly, all based upon the interaction between component, state, and national. And the ADA is one of the few national organizations that has a tripartite requirement. And while we're always thinking recruitment and retention, no other professional association has our membership level. And it all gets back to what the senator said, organization and getting involved in the organization. And that's what we have to do.
And I'd like to especially thank the senator for joining us today and giving us insight to, really what happens in Albany and what impact we can have as new dentists. And we thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and with your family.
Well, thank you guys. It's always great to be here with my extended family. I put my email in the chat, so if anyone ever has a question they want to reach out, feel free to send me an email. If I can connect you to your local representatives, I will. If I can answer a question for you, I will. If you find yourself in Albany, either for a NYSDA lobby day or for some other reason, please reach out. My office is always open. Just good luck. And again, just kudos to you all for being part of an organization and for dedicating your time to this. Because if you didn't, what would happen to the future of organized dentistry?